Hi everybody, and welcome to another WeatherCast USA Quickcast. On this Quickcast, we're going to break down the impactful winter storm set to bring winter weather to millions of people across the central and eastern parts of the US. A very diverse storm system that is going to bring a lot of travel troubles, power infrastructure issues, and widespread impacts from the south central US across the Central Plains into portions of the Great Lakes and across the East Coast over the next few days. So let's get into it. So this is a look, what a crazy look on this map. It is a map filled with winter weather advisories and a very wintry map here. Even across the Pacific Northwest, there's some cold weather advisories and some freezing fog advisories. So even the Pacific Northwest, although you're gonna miss this main system we're talking about today, still a very wintry pattern. You can see here though, across the entire eastern 2/3 of the US, pretty much, there are winter weather advisories, warnings, and all kinds of things. The blue colors across the Midwest, this is primarily extreme cold warnings and watches in that blue color. We do have a couple winter storm warnings as well as some blizzard warnings across the UP of Michigan into western Michigan for lake effect snow. And then once we get down into the Rockies and into the southern plains, this is in the purple where we have winter weather advisories across portions of the plains and Rockies. And then this pink area, large pink area here highlighted, those are winter storm warnings. And that's going to affect millions of people here from eastern areas of New Mexico through much of Texas, pretty much all of Oklahoma, much of Arkansas, portions of Tennessee, Kentucky, Missouri, Kansas. And those winter storm warnings will likely expand over the next day or so to areas on the East Coast. So these areas in blue along the East Coast, the darker blue, those are winter storm watches. They'll get converted as we get closer to the time frame of impacts for the East Coast. And then obviously you can see some of these areas are overlapping with warnings and advisories. There's cold weather advisories that stretch all the way to the East Coast, also down to the Gulf Coast, and then those are overlapped with the winter storm warnings and winter storm watches. A pretty messy map, but it just shows you all of the winter weather that's going to impact the US over the next couple days. I should also note this area into the lower Mississippi Valley from portions of southwest Tennessee, northwest Alabama, through much of northern and north central Mississippi, into the extreme northeastern portions of Louisiana in that purplish color. Those are ice storm warnings. Wouldn't be surprised if we get a few more ice storm warnings, especially on the southern end of the winter storm warnings as we continue here through the next 24 hours. Prolonged icing event is likely across the Mid-South, the Tennessee Valley, and into the Carolinas. So very impactful ice storm and going to affect some major airport hubs like Dallas, potentially Atlanta, but especially north and east of Metro Atlanta, into the higher terrain of northeast Georgia, but then also into hubs like Charlotte are going to be impacted by pretty significant icing. Memphis, not the biggest passenger hub, but a really major air hub for freight airlines, and that's going to be an impactful hub there by ice, sleet, and probably snow, getting a little bit of everything in the Memphis area. Let's take a look here at the latest models and show you what the data is showing. And for this quick cast, we're going to go over to our friends at Pivotal Weather, give them a look over there, pivotalweather.com. Some great model analysis and some tools that are available there. And I want to take a close look here at a couple of the models. Obviously, the important thing when forecasting is not just looking at one model, but looking at an array of models, an ensemble of models. Those ensembles are 50 to 100 models each and help kind of hone in on a forecast. It's also important to look for trends over those models and model ensemble runs. So I'm kind of taking a very quick look at this here for you today. Not going to bore you with a really drawn out look at an analysis of all the different ensembles. I just want to kind of go through a couple of the main models, show you a couple key points of what I think and what they're doing well and what they maybe are lacking a little bit. So looking at the GFS, as I bring this out, you can see that snow coming in across the Rockies first. This little wave is going to drop down from the Rockies. That's going to interact with a cutoff low, essentially an upper mid-level low off the California coast. That's going to be working its way onshore and through northern Mexico through the day tomorrow. And that's going to draw some Pacific moisture. When we have this situation here with an upper level low, a developing surface low, Pacific moisture, almost an atmospheric river of Pacific moisture, as well as getting drawn up moisture from the Gulf, that's going to really create the situation that is making a prolonged ice and snow event for this storm system. So every storm system has fingerprints. It's unique in its identity. And this one is going to be a prolonged event with periods and rounds of snow, sleet, and freezing rain. And it looks like the models have been pretty consistent, both the Euro model as well as the American model, on essentially 2 main rounds of precip. This shows you as those storm systems start to interact with a deep area of Arctic cold that's just plunging southward into the US. That's going to create first mountain snows across portions of Colorado, New Mexico, even some of the higher terrain of Arizona, and back into the Four Corners, as well as some heavy mountain snow across the northern Rockies. Not quite as heavy there, but especially those southern Rockies, it looks like that's going to be where there's a couple feet of snow possible on those higher elevations. And then that system spills out and deepens as it gets into the central and southern plains. And that's where we really see that snowfall intensifying across portions of Kansas, much of northern Oklahoma, the Texas Panhandle, and then especially into the higher terrain of the Ozarks. We can see the latest run of the GFS showing about 13 inches of snow across the northern parts. And that's just through really Saturday. As this first wave moves into the Appalachians and then into the Northeast, you can see that snow spreading there. And then we see the second wave adding more to the snowfall totals across the south central plains and the Ozarks. GFS printing 20 inches of snow across northern Arkansas. I'm not so sure about that, but it also puts, and it's been pretty consistent on this, 20 something inches of snow into central parts of Kentucky, especially north central, northeastern parts of Kentucky, and then now into the higher terrain of the Appalachians and West Virginia. And then as the system kind of passes, it's also going to reinvigorate the lake effect snows. So you do see there's higher snowfall totals continuing downwind of Lake Superior, as well as some lake effect bands off Erie and Ontario as well. And then the pretty wide area of at least a foot to a foot and a half of snow across Pennsylvania, most of New Jersey, and then even into coastal areas of New England. Although it is going to mix, I think, with sleet and even freezing rain at times across the very extreme coastal areas of the Northeast and New England. So that is going to drop the snowfall totals a little bit there. And then the GFS is doing a decent job at a pretty sharp cutoff on the southern end. That's where the rain and snow is going to mix into freezing rain and eventually all rain as the warm and moist air overspreads the shallower, cool air. And it's going to be very cold at the surface level. A pretty sharp cutoff of where that wintry weather and especially that snow is going to be. Some of this down in here, maybe get a little bit of snow, but most of this is going to be freezing rain and then sleet. And the GFS kind of picks up on a couple inches of sleet are possible across portions of North Texas, Texarkana, and the Arklatex, and then up across the I-40 corridor, I think especially. That's where we're going to see a lot of mixing with snow, sleet, and freezing rain across Tennessee from the Memphis area through the Nashville area. And north sides of those metro areas, more snow. South side of those metro areas, more freezing rain. Within 50 to 60 miles across, say, the Nashville metro, you could go from freezing rain and even rain at times over to pretty heavy snow on the north side of town. I think the GFS is doing a pretty good job. It's pretty much been in the same spot the last 24 hours or so. It has not wavered as much. Last couple days, both the GFS and the Euro models and the ensembles, they went south for a little bit, and then they've slowly kind of worked their way back to the north. And then since most of today, it's mostly kind of hung in this area. Although we have seen, I think, a little bit increase in the snow totals on the north and west side. I was a little unsure of that the other day. I thought maybe the dry air would win out a little bit and curtail some of the snowfall totals across the I-70 corridor. But it now does look like at least about 7 to 12 inches of snow potentially across the I-70 corridor, especially along and south of I-70. That includes Kansas City, potentially around 10 inches of snow. And then certainly down by Wichita, could be a foot of snow or even a few more inches. And then, yeah, basically riding right along I-70. Indianapolis is another one. More snow to your south and east. little less snow to the north and west, and especially into northern Indiana. Just probably a few inches of snow up in northern Indiana. And then also Columbus, yes, it's kind of the same deal. More heavy snow to the higher terrain of southeast Ohio, a little less up towards the Toledo area. I think it's doing a pretty good job. Let's look at the Euro model, and basically starts out very similar. Look at today, there's really nothing in a lot of these areas, especially outside of the Great Lakes. The Great Lakes have a lot of snow on the ground, but areas like Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Missouri, and even up into portions of the Northeast, there's not much snow on the ground right now. That's going to change very quickly in the next couple days. But very similar, we see the snow getting started, heavier snow into the southern Rockies, the Colorado Rockies, and into parts of New Mexico. And then same kind of deal, the higher terrain of Arizona and the Four Corners also getting in on that. And then by Saturday, we see those heavier snowfall totals already working across parts of Oklahoma. Again, kind of a bullseye in northwest portions of Arkansas, southern Missouri, and then much of Kansas getting in on a few inches of snow. Looks like 4 to 6 inches probably in those areas by Saturday afternoon. That's essentially with round 1. And then as round 1 works its way to the east, more heavy snow along the Ohio River Valley. I think, and it's been doing it for the last couple of days, I think the Euro model's narrowness of the heavy snow band, I've liked that. I think at times the GFS has had a little too wide of a heavy snow band. You can kind of see the difference here when we go back and forth between the two. But yeah, looking out a little further, bringing this out the whole way, again, it kind of spreads heavier snow across much of the Northeast and New England, with heavier snow across the Alleghenies of Pennsylvania and into West Virginia, Western Maryland. A really heavy band of snow essentially hugging the Ohio River. Another heavier pocket of snow into north and north central Oklahoma, maybe into southern Missouri, far or southwest Missouri, and far southeast Kansas. And then you can see kind of across the higher terrain in the Northeast as well. Some pretty heavy snowfall totals, over a foot of snow possible. I like the Euro model. I like how narrow this heavy snow band is, especially across the plains and the Midwest. I think, again, like I already mentioned, there's going to be a very sharp cutoff that the Euro model, I think, handles pretty good between heavy snow and then sleet and freezing rain. The Euro model, I think, continues to be a little bit north right now of the GFS, tucking that heavier snow back across Kentucky. You can see a lot less snow in the Euro model, the latest run of that, across much of Tennessee. Although still a few inches of snow and sleet are possible in this Euro model, especially north and west sides of Nashville. But working a little bit warmer air into parts of the Tennessee Valley, the Euro model keeps a lot of the snow away from those southern Appalachian areas into North Georgia and northeast parts of Alabama. And very similar to the GFS, a lot of this on the southern edge is going to be a mix of sleet and some snow and also freezing rain. So really along that I-40 corridor, you're getting a mix of precip either way. It's just kind of how much more towards snow or more towards freezing rain. That's kind of the key difference right now between some of the models, but also we just don't know. Some of that's going to happen once the snow starts, or once the storm starts really taking shape and its exact track. So prepare for essentially across that I-40 corridor, really kind of everything: snow, sleet, and significant freezing rain. Further to the south from the Dallas area along that I-20 corridor, Shreveport, southern parts of Arkansas, Texarkana, over towards Jackson, Mississippi, and then certainly northern Mississippi, and really kind of north of I-20 in Alabama, north of the Birmingham metro. That's where we see pretty significant potential for icing, and some pretty significant icing, potentially over an inch of ice accretion. And that would bring down trees, power lines, and cause some significant travel delays as well as power infrastructure issues. With the freezing cold coming in behind the system, that's going to prolong power issues and also issues with, people not having heat potentially for days into some really deep cold. Please, if you're in these areas, prepare for extended time without power, having some non-perishable foods, but also blankets. And it's also important to go over safety tips. You don't run, generators and carbon monoxide producing heaters indoors. If you do have to run, portable generators, make sure those are away from your door and windows, and run those lines inside from a distance. Yeah, it's just important not to run cars in the garage to heat up. Things like that have had disastrous results of people just trying to get warm. It is important to kind of go over those safety measures. And then also, if I was in this area, especially along the southern edge, again, that I-40 corridor down to I-20, making sure your batteries are charged on your phone, your portable chargers, your jump starter kind of charger things. Obviously your NOAA weather radio, making sure that's all charged up, batteries ready to go in that. Flashlights and lanterns and things like that, making sure the batteries are ready and you're ready for an extended time without power. So back to kind of the overall look. This is the Euro model, and I think it does a pretty good job showing you what's going on here. We have a deep area of Arctic cold coming into the central and northern plains. Negative wind chills into the negative 50s, potentially even lower than that, negative 60 kind of range. So really dangerous cold. Let me actually just read you the extreme cold warning. This is out of that area around National Weather Service Duluth. Dangerously cold wind chills as low as 55 degrees below zero could cause frostbite on exposed skin in as little as 5 minutes. So yeah, those wind chill warnings are dangerously cold wind chills of negative 45 to near negative 60 degrees. That's 60 degrees below zero. And that's with the wind chills. So that's going to be just a prolonged cold event without a lot of snow across the northern parts of the U.S. And then as we put this into motion, you can see the storm system working out here. This cutoff low, this mid to upper level low off the California coast is going to start really pumping some of that moisture across parts of northern Mexico and into the southern Rockies and the Four Corners, and then into the southern plains. You can see with that low approaching and then the developing surface low over the Rockies, those systems, the surface low and the mid to upper level low, create additional lift. So we have moisture, we have lift, extra lift, and then that cold boundary between the Arctic air and a little bit warmer air right along the Gulf. That sets up a frontal system and a clash of air masses, and you can just kind of see what's going on here. Clash of air masses, extra lift, and extra pump of moisture, and that's going to lead to really heavy precip breaking out across Texas by late on Friday and into the overnight into Saturday morning, and potentially even some thunderstorms across central Texas, the hill country, with freezing rain on the north side of that, across the west Texas and the hill country, and then across the Red River Valley into the Arklatex. Some really heavy freezing rain, and then snow starting to break out on the north side of that across Arkansas and Oklahoma, Kansas, and spreading into western Missouri. We still got some snow pumping across the Rockies too by overnight Friday into early Saturday. And that just continues to strengthen and deepen as this ejects from the Rockies. And you can see that moisture overspreading the cold air, with snow continuing across the Ohio River Valley, and then sleet and freezing rain across the mid-Mississippi Valley, the Tennessee Valley. So potentially some storms here by Saturday afternoon working across the Gulf Coast. That's where we start to see this first round moves off into the northeast and the mid-Atlantic, with heavy snow from Ohio back through the Washington, D.C. metro and into Virginia, and then really heavy ice and freezing rain and sleet approaching the southern Appalachians and the Carolinas, as that second wave starts to eject from the Rockies back through Texas and Oklahoma with a really heavy band of snow. Looks like setting up according to this model run, and it's going to differ, it's going to change by the time we get into the actual timing, but this model sets up a pretty heavy band of snow there across Oklahoma, parts of Kansas and Missouri, continuing that heavy snow across the Ohio River. And again, working into the northeast by Sunday, you can really see, and then a shift off the coast with a surface low developing off the coast. That's going to continue to pump then some Atlantic moisture into this cold Arctic air mass. So continuing heavy snow across the northeast megalopolis, with freezing rain and sleet across the mid-Atlantic, the Delmarva, maybe even transitioning to some rain at some point. So you may get all precip from snow, freezing rain, sleet, and rain. and then potentially a line of storms showing up in the warm sector ahead of the cold front with really Arctic air shoving in behind it. That's also going to create problems in the south. Areas that see rain on Saturday and Sunday may get flash freezing Sunday night and into Monday morning. Just because it looks like it's wet, if you step out on Monday morning, it may be pretty icy. Baton Rouge over towards Covington, Louisiana, and even across southern parts of Mississippi by Monday. And that continues then as that low, the coastal low, works its way to the north and east. You can see more heavy snow working across the northeast and New England. Potentially on the backside, looks like some continued area of lake effect snow and some snow showers in those higher terrain of the Appalachians. But after that, not a big warm up. The snow is going to stick around. Anything that falls, not just the snow, but the sleet, freezing rain, it's all going to stick around as this Arctic high kind of builds in across the central and eastern portions of the U.S. Some snow showers by Tuesday, still continuing across the northeast, maybe some steadier snow still across northern parts of New England. But yeah, this is going to be a very prolonged cold event, and not till really any time, kind of midweek. We may get a little bit of a warm up midweek for some areas, but this deep cold is going to stick around, I think, through really the end of the month into February. And some of the latest models, we'll have to see about this, but by mid to late next week, some of the latest model runs have even a reinforcing dig of cold air, with that Arctic air reaching all the way down into the Gulf Coast by later in the week. And it's a little too early to see what happens here, but there are hints, and the models, the GFS as well as the Euro, have hinted at another southern winter storm system. So a little too far out to really get into those details, but just be aware, there may be another round of winter precip while this cold looks like it stays locked into the eastern and central parts of the continental US. I want to take a look here and break it down a little simpler for anyone that wants kind of the quick hit. This is a graphic created earlier this evening based on the different model runs and the trends that we've been seeing in the models. But in general, and it's going to vary a little bit. Also, obviously, Mother Nature doesn't have straight lines, so where there's a sharp divide, it's going to wiggle around a little bit. But in general, from parts of New Mexico, across northwest parts of Texas, the Texas Panhandle, Oklahoma, Kansas, Missouri, into the Ohio River Valley, and then into the Northeast, generally heavy snow, potentially, and in general, 8 to 12 inches plus sort of snow, with pockets, I think, there of 12 to 15 inches at least in some of those areas. And then heavy mountain snow, a little less in the valleys and lower terrain, and then some accumulating snow across northern Kansas, northern Missouri, north central parts of Illinois and Indiana, and into southeast Michigan. I think Detroit could have 4 inches, 5 inches of snow. Nothing that's going to really shut down Detroit too much, but and some of those areas in northern Indiana are well used to snow. It's definitely not going to be the potentially a real full shutdown of snow here across portions of the Ohio Valley and then the southern plains. And then lighter amounts across the Corn Belt. Chicago might see some snow, but I don't think it's going to be a big snowstorm for you guys. And then certainly some lake effect into Michigan. But yeah, that heavy snow, I think, really hugs the southern plains and then into the Ohio Valley and then into the Northeast. We have that wintry mix listed on the southern end of this across especially south and east portions of Oklahoma. That, I think, is going to get into the Oklahoma City metro. Oklahoma City is going to have likely heavy snow transitioning to sleet, maybe some freezing rain mixing in as well, and then back to snow. So heavy accumulations of snow, but also some significant icing possible and also sleet possible. And then kind of the same way across northern Texas, it's going to wiggle between snow, sleet, and freezing rain. More in the Dallas area, we're looking more like an ice storm with some sleet and some lighter snow mixing in, but mostly freezing rain and sleet for Dallas. Across areas like Little Rock, probably the same kind of thing. Less snow, more sleet, also pretty significant freezing rain. Memphis, Nashville is going to be a really tricky forecast. A little too close to call in the Nashville. You could, if the cold air wins out, you could get more snow. If the warm nose kicks up a little bit, you could get more freezing rain. So Nashville, very, very tricky forecast. That also is going to be a really tricky forecast where that warm nose reaches up into the coastal areas of the Northeast, like Washington, D.C., Baltimore. Probably going to start as snow, transition over to some sleet, maybe some freezing rain, and then back to snow. And then same way for the coastal areas of New England, the areas right along the coast in the southeast Massachusetts, likely getting some less snow, more freezing rain, more rain even at times, and also sleet. So very tricky forecast there. Parts of South Jersey mixing with snow, sleet, and some freezing rain. The Carolinas looks like it's mostly outside of the higher terrain of the Appalachians and maybe extreme northwest parts of North Carolina. Carolinas looks like you're mostly going to be in that sleet and freezing rain scenario, as well as Georgia. Not a lot of snowflakes. That's mostly going to be freezing rain and sleet. If any sleet mixes in, even in the higher terrain, that would likely be in far northeast Georgia, as well as much of, again, central Texas, East Texas, into Louisiana, Mississippi. A significant, potentially crippling ice storm is possible in the pink areas there. The one saving grace for Atlanta, the northern nose of the warm air may work its way into Atlanta just enough that the crippling ice storm may stay to your north, with potentially some severe thunderstorms across portions of the Gulf South. And I do want to look also here at some of the thunderstorm forecasts that started to come out this afternoon as we got a little better into the range of the convective allowing models. This can be freaky at times. I've been in a couple sleet storms, and it was kind of one of the freakier things. I've had thunder snow, and it wasn't as freaky as the thunder sleet. Heavy sleet, just making all the sound. It just sounds like marbles are getting dumped on you. It's very weird sound. It's different than thunder snow. And with the thunder and lightning, it just adds to kind of, it's really just this creepy, chaotic kind of sound, because you're pretty hard sleet. Probably some hail was mixing into that when I experienced thunder sleet. So it just want to prepare you for it. It can be a kind of a weird sensory overload kind of situation. But in round one, looking at the lightning flash density, this is overnight too, into from Friday into Saturday. There is a potential for some freezing rain and sleet thunder, or thunder sleet and thunder ice across portions of, I think, especially southeast parts of Oklahoma, the Red River, and then down into the Dallas-Fort Worth area and down into central Texas. Some of this towards the hill country may be all rain and just normal thunderstorms at that point here, South Texas. But yeah, up in this Dallas-Fort Worth area, North Texas, potentially for some thunder sleet. This may work its way into the early morning hours into Arkansas and the Arklatex as well. And then in round two, as that round two develops late Saturday and into early Sunday, looks like potentially another shot, and even a little stronger shot, of thunder sleet and thunder ice from northeast parts of Texas, especially the Arklatex, up into areas like Little Rock, Memphis, and the Tennessee Valley. You can see some lightning showing up here in the areas here in Mississippi. I think south of I-20, though, that's going to be mostly all rain. Potentially, again, some severe weather, I think, is a potential. As we've seen those models trend north the last couple days, that's opened the door for a little bit more in the way of severe potential. This was a sounding taken earlier this afternoon, and as we were going over stuff on the NAM model, one of the convective allowing models, from basically central Alabama, showing about 70 degrees over a dew point of 66. You can see the critical angle 47 up here in the hodograph. So pretty nice sickle shape. I don't think it's going to be a tornado outbreak, but just that is going to add a little bit of moisture and instability in here that I think is being under modeled at some points right now. And we'll see if the Storm Prediction Center adjusts their forecast for a little bit more concentrated area severe activity potentially. And you can see it here again on the NAM. This is the supercell composite. Essentially, the NAM and the RRFS model are very similar, showing that nose of instability reaching up to about Bibb County, Alabama. So south central Alabama, I think especially southern Alabama, and even parts of the Florida Panhandle could get in on it. Potentially also parts of southeast Mississippi, coastal Mississippi could have some stronger storms in this little warm nose that reaches up. It stays, looks like south of I-20 and pretty much also south and east of 59. So we'll see about that. It's probably going to peak and then quickly as we get the cold air undercutting and sweeping in and then lose the light, it should die out before it really gets into Georgia. But it looks like it's going to be potentially a little bit of a severe risk for, again, southeast Mississippi and parts of south and south central Alabama. So as I said earlier, every winter storm has unique fingerprints. This one is going to be a prolonged event. It's not just going to be a burst of snow and you're done. When it starts snowing and icing, it's going to pretty much stay snowing and icing for at least about 24 hours or more. And that is going to cause power outage issues, power infrastructure issues, as well as extreme travel difficulty. And in most of these areas that we've covered today, especially those areas that are expecting heavy snow, heavy sleet, and heavy ice, you really want to avoid travel. If you can get to a location that you want to stay in for the next few days, that would be the preferred idea, is to get there before this starts. So if you're in the Northeast, you have a little bit more time. If you're into Texas and Oklahoma, it's going to get going relatively early on Friday, but especially by midday and into the afternoon, it's going to start sleeting and getting into some freezing rain. So you may have some of the morning hours to get final preparations ready in the southern plains. And then, yeah, certainly by later on Friday, it's going to get rocking and rolling. And then same for the Midwest and the mid-Mississippi Valley into the Ohio Valley. Most of those areas should be okay on Friday, at least through the morning and afternoon. But you want to get to a spot that you want to stay in for the weekend by Friday evening, especially across the Ozarks into the mid-Mississippi Valley and then into the Ohio Valley as that winter precip spreads in by mostly for those areas after dark, but especially into the overnight hours. And it's going to lock in Saturday and Sunday. So yeah, if you can, I know not everybody can, but if you can, to make a plan, that's what I would do, is make sure you can get to a spot that you're safe in and, potentially a spot that has reliable power and, non-perishable foods, things like that. Get all that wrapped up before the storm system starts, because you're not going to want to go out in this. We're going to be here to cover it. We're probably going to do some live streaming this weekend. We have not done a lot of winter weather live streaming, but we will likely do it with this event unfolding across the many parts of the U.S. from the South Central Plains into the Northeast. Potentially, if, again, that some of those trends uptrend in the severe activity, we could be on for a severe weather stream. Again, it doesn't look like it's going to be a widespread severe weather event, but there is a little bit of an uptrend over the last day or so in some of those severe weather parameters. So we will keep an eye on that one. And then follow on Facebook, on Twitter, and certainly here on YouTube for updates. Definitely also stay tuned to your local National Weather Service office. They're on social media and also on just the website. You can search it. Search National Weather Service and your local city, and you should be able to pull up your local National Weather Service office, as well as your local media. Your local media has obviously working knowledge and in-depth knowledge of your local community, the local terrain issues and things like that can create some uniqueness to the winter weather. So definitely make sure you're following multiple reliable sources. And if you're new here, click on that bell icon to get notifications when we go live, when we post new forecast videos. And we are glad that you're tuning into us as one of those reliable sources. Thanks, everyone. Have a great night. Stay safe.